Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Living Ascension. And so this is a great topic. And it's funny that we never have really come across it, but I love how these are sort of blossoming into new kind of or next level evolutions of discussion, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it all started, right, from talking about, it's funny, we see a lot and don't get us wrong, we've done this over the past years, whatever, of this getting distracted, or not really, let's not call it distracted yet. Let's say super hyper focused on things like, is the government manipulating us? And then you have all these, whether you want to call them conspiracy theories or whatever, right? So you've got the
Or
Illuminati.
alternative theories.
Right. So you've got, good morning, Gloria. So you've got the conspiracy theories about, whether we ever went to the moon or ever, or who's controlling, the small number of people who are controlling everybody, which, conspiracy is just a matter of alternative, because I don't even look at conspiracy. I think everything is at least partially true these days.
Exactly.
But then you have things like, how the public's being manipulated. Good morning, Yasmin. You're having all kinds of things about oh, well, what's the subliminal motivation and ulterior motive for all of these things happening, right? And we have a lot of those.
Right. I mean, COVID, monkeypox, vaccine, not vaccine, mask, not
Right.
mask. I mean, everything you talk about, the weather. It used to be the weather was a safe topic.
Oh,
And
yeah,
now
no,
it's
not
like
anymore. Yeah,
controlling the weather, manipulating the weather.
Yeah.
So
we have all that stuff, right? So
right.
you can pick any of a number of a million different perspectives about manipulation. And we do it in our everyday lives, right? We've talked about that before. It's not even a conscious thing, right? Because there's this goal of the ego saying, this is my end point. This is how I want to, massage this, right? Or AKA manipulate it to get to this or whatever. So we have people manipulating us all the time. And it's up to us in consciousness to be conscious of being more authentic and non-manipulating, right? That's the goal, right? Because we want to be authentic. But then we were sort of looking at, but you know what? Being manipulated, or the effort of somebody manipulating you, is actually a fabulous, fabulous opportunity.
Really is. I've already decided that this is one of my favorite topics. I've been observing it all weekend. Even parts of last week. And it's like, I've become so passionate about it. And in doing so, found so many places where I'm guilty of manipulating others.
Right. But then when we look at the tool, so here's the thing, if we have it everywhere, right? Because by the way, if you really want to get to the bigger picture, it's all illusion anyway. So we're all manipulating an illusion. We're eluding the illusion, right?
Right.
And we went through, it was funny. I kept on getting messages that would cross, and I don't watch the news purposely. I haven't for years. I would have stuff that would just cross in front of me in my purview. And when it starts to repeat itself, I'm like, okay, there's something for me to look at here, right?
Right.
So there have been over the years, many things that I have been pointed to look at. Real subtle mind control efforts, and not so subtle, and big projects, and things that have happened in a X-Files kind of manner, and then I say, well, what? And remember, even before COVID started, that was 6 months before that, and I just kept on getting one thing after the other of all of these things about being manipulated, controlled, and whatever. And I finally stepped back and said, okay, well, I know not to get sucked in, right? That's one lesson. Number one. Lesson number two is, what am I to do with this information?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. What's here for me?
What's here for me? What is there for me to be conscious of so that I'm not spending an inordinate amount of time like weeding through all this stuff and letting the ego really mire itself down in distraction, because that's really what happens, right?
Right.
Because the ego gets afraid, right? It starts getting fearful of, oh, I'm going to be controlled. I'm going to be locked down. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be punished. Da, 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 da. And so what can I do to avoid this? And then you got people like in the extremism of, I'm creating, a bunker, and I'm like doing this and I'm doing that. And I want to have this much money in the bank because, then I can, disappear. And it's like, well, but if you really truly believe that, then in a case like in the scenario you're thinking of, the whole entire financial institution could collapse, and then you could have millions and millions of dollars and they'd be worthless.
Right.
So what does it matter?
Or inaccessible.
Right. Or inaccessible. Exactly. So, so really the question to come to is, every time something like that crosses our, like suddenly there's a resurgence, it seems, out there on discussions around whether we ever made it to the moon or not. And there's no judgment. Here's the thing, is there's no judgment. And it's like, because the mind starts going, oh, well, I want to look at the debate for and against. I want to look at all the little details. I want to look at all of this.
The facts.
I want to look at the facts, which are all subjective anyway.
Right.
And so instead of going through all that, because really we are addicted to the drama, right? We're addicted to the fear. We're addicted to like trying to control. So then we get distracted. It's really a distraction. All it is a distraction. And
Right.
the tool that it becomes is, how strong are you in your own consciousness and guidance to take every piece that comes across your purview and say, what's in it for me? Like, what's in this? Like, that's important for me to take note of. Like, is there anything for me to do? Not should, because should engages the ego. Is there anything for me to do right now with this? Is there
Right.
anything for me to get from it, to glean from it? And, the answer that I've gotten over and over again is simply navigate. All it is to know how to navigate.
And we're approaching this today, but also keep in mind that we have an entire course on guidance.
Yes.
An entire course on guidance. And then we also have talked multiple times about presence, which to me, this is that melding of the two, is you come to that place of presence in the moment and then layer it with the guidance and say, okay, in this moment, in this minute, right here, right now, what's the message for me? What's here for me?
Yep.
And then you move to the next moment, and then the next moment, and staying in that melding of the two is so powerful.
Yes. And it's this alone breaks huge ingrained patterns. Right. And that's where we do get manipulated. We do allow ourselves to manipulate and be manipulated without that consciousness. Right. And because we'll make decisions based on those fears. Like, I know somebody, and I have had so many conversations with them about, like, they are like stocking up, like they stocked up and got like a year's worth of supplements. They're getting like all the stuff that's off the grid. They're doing all this stuff because they're like, oh, we're in for a big crash and da da. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But did you just ask if that was what there was for you to do? Or are you doing this out of fear? And really they're doing it out of fear. Right. And it's like, okay, well, but what if something happens where you need to shift really quickly and you've put all this money and investment in this, and then it's, no, you got to move, because maybe something does come to fruition, but the movement becomes easier. It would be easier if you didn't have all that stuff to mar you down.
Right. Yeah.
And
well, and those are some of the bigger issues. The things that I was looking at this weekend are the smaller day-to-day things. Like I was finding myself a couple of times triggered. And we always say, if you're triggered by something, then there's something there for you to look at.
Absolutely.
So that combines another thing that we've always said. And so I was looking at how when I talk about things that I'm passionate about, especially in the consciousness realm, and I meet opposition, I really would get intense about it. And I don't want to say angry, but I would get intense about it, and almost to the point of, but can't you just see? And it was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. This is for me, not for them.
Mhm.
And that it is their choice. But I kept feeling like, oh, here's where I'm manipulating. Here's where I'm manipulating and wanting them to see things my way, so that then I feel like I've accomplished something, like I've had influence over someone. So I feel better about how I feel.
Right.
Or, I mean, any number of explanations, but that is such a more subtle manipulation than like we're talking about with, the stock market or the weather,
Well,
or
and that's
the,
the collective stuff. Well, we
the
have both,
collective.
right? We have the collective and the individual, as we do in consciousness, right? All the
But the individual, as we've always said, feeds the larger collective. So it's just my facet of that.
right.
But that just seemed to be in my face so much this weekend, and it brought me to such a different level of peace within myself to realize that and say, I don't have to do that anymore. Not to beat myself up for having done it, but to say, I don't have to do that anymore.
Right. Well, and the other part is we from birth are pretty much manipulated by others and what they want.
Absolutely. Children are the biggest source of being manipulated and being the manipulator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, we have a whole field of psychology, we have about that. We have a whole, and so, being a former marketer when I was in corporate, that was my profession, was marketing communications, and it was all psychology. Like, people don't realize that's really what it is. It's all psychology. Why do you do focus groups? You do all that kind of stuff. You do research to see how people react to certain things, to see what's more amenable to people and what's not. And then you position a product with colors and words and energies around certain things that are more amenable and attractive, or make somebody feel good about themselves. That's all what marketing is. That is what every commercial and ad you ever see is about.
Right.
Everyone, every single one. And so that's manipulation. That's psychological manipulation. We do it to our kids because we want to train them. We do it to our animals because we want to train them. Right.
Right.
People do it to us.
Conditioning. It's conditioning.
Yes. And we do it all the time. So the thing is, what if we step back and said, wait a second, whoa, right? But like, it's a matter of really saying, is this for me? We are so hooked into the idea of externalization, right? Of unworthiness. Of course, we also have a whole course on worthiness, right? To take at Wonderland.
Right.
So,
and whether you're even lovable at all, which we have the whole self-love course.
Right. And so, like, we have all of these things that we're convinced through the manipulation that we're not that way intrinsically, and that we have to gain that and attain it and search for it and get it, right? So that we allow all kinds of manipulation and we're not even conscious about it, right? So it's funny because recently I was talking to somebody who said, like, by the way, so she calls me up and says, the weirdest thing happened to me. She's like, I was talking to a friend of mine about something that we had not seen any information on, and blah, 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 blah. And like the next day it showed up in my feed, like as an ad. And I said, right. I said, because they're listening. And I didn't mean that like in a conspiratorial way. It was in a factual. So because they're listening. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, all of the electronic devices, they hear our words, no matter whether you turn the audio on or not, you have different ways of getting in. I said, oh, I was saying how my husband and I, we play the games with that all the time. We'll talk about certain things and see how long it takes before it shows up, say, in our ads on Hulu or whatever.
Right,
So,
right.
so, and it's you literally like not even a day, literally it could be
It's
hours.
pretty quick. It's
It's
pretty
pretty.
quick.
So, and I'm like, and so she was mortified. She was horrified. She's like, don't tell me that. She goes, I just want to pack it all in. And I said, why? I said, because it can be used for your advantage, right? Because if you're looking for something, all you gotta do is say out loud, hey, it'd be great to be able to find information about this thing.
Right, right.
But I'm like, but the other thing is, it's like being aware of it. It's like, if you don't judge it and say it's, like it can help you. But the thing is just to be aware of it going, we do that though with each other all the time. We're always culling out stuff people say, right? We're always, oh, well, I know.
And I
this
mean,
makes
even
me
if you
happy,
look at it from a perspective of you want to buy a gift for someone,
Mhm.
and you think back to your conversations of things they've said, like, oh, I wish I had this, or I wish this were different, or I wish I could replace this, or I just love this color.
Right. That's what we do all the time.
Exactly. So we use that information, but yet it's a good thing. It's like, oh, well, they are such a good gift giver because they know me.
Right. Right.
It's essentially the same thing.
Right. Right. And so that's what they do in marketing. And now they have all of this available to do that with, right? So yeah, can the government do it? Of course the government's doing it. Of course the
Right.
news is doing it. That's why I don't watch the
Business.
news, right? Business is doing it.
And even groups like social media are doing it to sell, to
Right.
make money.
Right. Right. And so it's not something to judge. It's something to just know about, right? To be aware of.
Exactly.
Right. And when you are aware of it, it's a matter of saying, okay, is this for me? Because this is the really great tool this can become, is it really digs us deep into our inner guidance and inner, like awareness. Because
and that also layers on with our authenticity.
Yes. Because it keeps us very aware, hyper conscious, hyper present in a place of, I know what I'm doing, where I am, what is my direction in every moment. And I am not going to allow something to unconsciously manipulate me anymore.
Right. And if we sit there and weigh the information being presented to us in an objective fashion and say, that's not for me, how's that manipulative? How's that a detriment? How's that a bad thing? It's not. It's simply saying, how does this match my energy? Oh, it doesn't? Okay, then I no longer have to give it any attention.
Right. And then if you look at things in the other direction, like, so say there's stuff, and there is stuff that has been brought up at the collective level to manipulate people into anger, into being propelled into doing something, right? To
call to action, right?
Call to action kind of thing. And if you don't judge that and you just say, well, that really did trigger me. Why did it trigger me? Right. Well, thank you. Thank you to that manipulative effort to have triggered me so that I could look at something I was harboring that would cause me to react and be propelled by something like that. So now I can resolve that, move forward so that it doesn't trigger me, and you can do it all you want in front of me. It's not going to faze me in the least.
Exactly.
How powerful is that?
How free is that?
And that's like secondary to our discussion on freedom from last week, right?
Exactly.
It frees us, and the more the manipulation goes on around us, the more we're conscious about it, the more free we are.
Right. So bring on the manipulation. I want to be free.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, this is such a great nitty-gritty, like powerful thing. And we just because we spend so much time judging it, right? Like I said, like it was like talking to that person who's like horrified and, oh, I just want to get off the grid. And I'm like, nope, it's okay. Just be aware of it.
Right.
I said, look, it helps you find that thing.
Right. Would simply almost make you more susceptible because you don't exercise that.
Yes.
And I really feel that the amped up belief that we're being manipulated more is just simply, let's exercise this guidance muscle to where we just don't even think about it anymore, and we're automatically in that place of listening to guidance.
Right.
I mean, I really think that it's training.
It is. We're training ourselves to do it. But the thing is, the more we just ignore that and fall into it, right? Or then we get irritated or propelled by it, then it's just going to continue on and get bigger and bigger because we're ignoring it.
Right. Exactly.
Look at how big it's gotten because we've been ignoring it. Right.
Yes.
And blatant. I've
Right.
watched so many things that are so blatant, and people are like, well, how do people not see that? And especially in the political arena, it's like, oh, that's completely like illogical. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't, align with what was a week ago. And it's like, right. Well, people are falling for it. Nobody's stopping and saying, wait a second. Nobody's stopping and saying, wait a second, is one side pitting, or are both sides pitting everybody against each other on purpose?
Right.
Like, or is there is there something about this? Is this for me? Is this something for me to look at? Like, what is there for me to see in transcendence? And then wait a second, maybe it's for us to just throw this whole freaking thing out, or something
Right.
like that.
Well, it reminds me of how that I don't even know what you call it, parable story, whatever, of the emperor's clothing. It's like,
Yes.
How old is that? That's how long this has been going on.
I know. And it was funny because my husband and I actually had a whole situation like that come up in a community we belong to online. And like this weekend, we're like, are people just that? Then people are just that willing to deny. Like, and that's the thing. It points to how much self-denial we are still in when things like that.
Right. And it's without judgment. It's all that, okay, that's for that person, but that doesn't have to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
And if that person needs this, it's there.
Right.
Great.
Right. Morning,
But
Michael.
it's not for me.
Yes. Yes. And so, all right. So we talk about that really big thing. I know I'm really hyper focused on the big picture because there's so much of it that goes on. It's so
Right.
loud. I mean, and it's almost deafening right now because there's so much of that going on. But individually, like we do this in our relationships all the time. And again, we call it psychology.
Right. Yes.
And so it's like, we'll think about, okay, how many times have you wanted somebody to do something for you or whatever, and you manipulated the situation to get them to do it? That's manipulating, right? And we've talked about that before.
Right.
But the thing is, and our loved ones that are closest to us, they do it to us all the time too. Right.
Right.
And so, and that's what we've learned. That's what we create in our cultures. We create that kind of manipulation, guilt trips, and, and
Martyrdom.
Attracting more bees to honey, and
Right.
all that. So the key is not to judge it. The key is just to be aware of it and be like, okay. And we tend to fall for that all the time, the time, because intrinsic in that is, oh, if they're happy with me, they'll love me, and I'm proved myself worthy to be loved because I don't believe that without that, and all that kind of stuff. And we've talked about that a bajillion.
Yeah. Good morning, Michael.
But to be aware of, oh, well, they're doing this with the motivation
Right.
for me to act this way, right?
Right.
And then you can ask, is it for me to do that? No, and not instead of the emotional, like egoic tug at, oh, well, I just want to make them happy, right? That's what we say all the time, especially about our spouses and our kids. Those are the biggest ones, right? Oh, I just want to make them happy. I just like making them happy. It just makes me happy to make them happy, as we've decided, because that makes me feel good about myself, because I don't feel good about myself without them being happy. And oh, by the way, nobody makes anyone happy besides ourselves, right? So nullify that. But how many times has somebody you loved said to you, or you've said to them, it would make me really happy?
Right.
Straight out.
Exactly. That level of honesty puts you in such a different position.
Yeah.
And
So
it really changes the dynamic of a relationship and brings it to a different level of communication,
yeah.
which then feeds that authenticity, which in my opinion strengthens the relationship, whether it stays in the same dynamic that it currently is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And when we make our decisions based on, am I to do this instead of should I do this for them, right? Or I should do this for them. And we step back and use our guidance and say, is it for me to do that
Right.
now? And, and it's funny because we can say that all we want, but then when it comes down to something where the logical mind goes, oh, you shouldn't do that, right? You shouldn't do that. That'll get them pissed. We don't think that that's actually like a manipulation. We think that that's, saving them getting pissed at us, right? Because then it goes back to that original thing is like the underlying motivation is, to make somebody happy. Well, if you love me, you would make me happy.
Right.
That's the manipulation, right? Instead of I'm responsible. Oh, wait, self-responsibility. There's another course that we offer.
That's right.
Instead of saying I'm responsible for my own happiness, and you can't make me happy, and I can't make you happy. All we can do is be happy next to each other and share the happiness, right?
Right.
And so this is where it really, think about that. If we did that every day and almost every interaction we do, and we stop and check in with that guidance. If I am to do that, am I to do this? Like, and I've been doing that since we talked about it, like all this past week. And it's almost become this like really loud thing in my head of, am I to do this? Yes or no? It's like, I asked that, it's like, I almost see the little, like, what are the decision trees, like, yes or no, should I, am I to do this or not?
Right.
Michael says, is there a difference between illusion and manipulation? Is it even possible to separate them? No, that's the whole point. Yeah. Right. I think, yeah. And it's like, the point is, this is all illusion anyway, right? So it's all in a manipulation of the matter of the universe to create an illusion of something, right?
Right.
That we want to play in, right? So we can choose to fall into it or not.
Right. Is this a portion of the illusion that I'd like to participate in?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yep. And again, it goes back to the freedom that we were talking about last week, where we were talking about the fact that we use fear, we utilize fear, and scarcity, right, to protect us from freedom. Well, this manipulation is, well, how do we best manipulate? By fear, right?
Exactly.
I can't tell you how many couples I've worked with who are in the process of breaking up, and they're like, they manipulated each other all the time about like being afraid of not being able to see the kids when they want to, or not having the what they want for, whatever. And I'm like, okay, stop. So what happens if you do? What happens if that happens?
Right.
Stop looking at it with the fear and look at it with this non-judgment. And is this the path for me to take? All you got to ask, is this the path for me to take? Is this the choice for me to make?
Right.
And if we keep
fear aside.
Yes, fear aside. Because we don't know how to, we typically don't know how to do that, because we'll say, oh, I would love to do this, but I can't because blah, 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 right? And we give 500 excuses why we can't, because the ego is justifying, no, I need to lock down because that's not safe, right? Versus saying, yeah, I think I feel like I'm to do this. This is the thing for me to do. And you know what? It takes a lot of retraining.
It does.
In relationships, because when you say, I'm doing this and I'm not doing it in consideration to you or anything, I'm just doing it as I'm guided, right? A lot of times then people, like in a relationship, they take it personally, right? They think it's some acting out against them or things like that. And I've seen that happen. It's like, no, it's a retraining to recognize, no, I'm just making my decisions for me, right? I can love you and I can make my own decisions at the same time. Right.
It's that that self-respect,
Mhm.
that self-awareness. It's all coming back to that self.
Yes. Yeah. So it's the same thing for, think about that. Think about how people got so embroiled in, like, when we go back to the collective level, right? And you got people got so embroiled in the mask or no mask, vaccine or no vaccine, blah, blah, blah. Does COVID exist? Does it not exist? Have we gone to the moon? Have we not gone to the moon? Right. The first question to ask is, why do I care?
Right.
And people get like a little affronted when I say that. The question really is, why do I care? Why should I care? What is there for me to care about?
How does this impact me?
Like, and the real question is, what is there for me here?
Right.
Is there anything for me here? If yes, here's the decision tree. If yes, proceed to the next question. What is there for me here?
Right.
And more times than not, I honestly get no. Nope, there's nothing for you here, just to see it, move on. And it is a training. It is a training that we're training ourselves with. And that's why it's getting so much bigger, because we have been failing. I don't like saying failing, but we have not been doing it very well. We've been ignoring it and just.
We've been almost like on autopilot.
Yes.
It's like living by default.
Yeah.
And this is allowing that consciousness to wake back up.
Yes.
Wake back up and say, okay, what is there really here for me?
Yeah.
Just me.
Yeah. So for our session today, we can focus on, there's so much to unpack with this.
There really is, because I think one of the key things is to lose the judgment of what manipulation is. And that allows a lot to unfold.
Right. Yeah. How about to see manipulation for what it really is, free of judgment, and to, that would be a good one. And to, in the micro and the macro, and to commit ourselves to, or I commit to the activity of navigating versus entrenching. That's a big one.
Right.
We've been talking about navigating for a while, right? Navigating to me is like the satellite, right? The satellite with your GPS system, right? You might be driving on the street going, why is the GPS telling me to go this way and not this way? And that's because the satellite can see other stuff that's there, right? So the navigation, when we navigate through manipulation and all kinds of soup, as I call it, right?
Right.
It's sort of transcending.
Which brings up another one of our courses, which is trust.
Wow, I think we're going to make it through all 7 today.
What can get us to the core of what manipulation and illusion is trying to show us ultimately? That's Michael's question.
Or is that the intention? That would be a good intention.
Oh, that's true. Right.
Yeah.
Which is, trusting our own guidance.
Right.
But yes, that's a good to add into the intention.
Right. It is a great thing to add into the intention, to have that consciousness of being able to see the purpose of it and what it's trying to show us. Because a lot of times, like I said, it is bringing up triggers in us. And the triggers in us, as you said, right, as you pointed out with your example earlier, is, oh yeah, no, this is for me. This isn't for anybody else. This is just for me. Why am I triggered? Why am I triggered? What is it? Why do you care? And then you start noticing when other people get triggered and you're not being triggered, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't, I mean, there's all kinds of like snowballing down the hill kind of thing with this. But yeah, so we can set that. So we can set seeing the truth of what the manipulation is there, what manipulation is there, right? Seeing it without free of judgment, seeing it in a way to understand what it's there to show us, right?
Right.
How to utilize it as a tool with gratitude. There we go. We got rid of there's the forgiveness and everything else for the manipulation, into a place of gratitude for having it and utilizing it to its optimal purpose individually for ourselves in our journeys. That feels good.
Yeah, that feels really complete.
Yeah. All right. So everyone, you know what to do. Let's take a deep breath and sit back, close our eyes. Oh, as we step out of separation back into wholeness and oneness, and we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. Boy, the ego is jittery with that one. Okay,
That
no.
was something I could have stayed for a lot longer.
Yeah. Took me a couple minutes because there was like, well, but, and then there was this collective but, and I was like, yeah, but look at all it's there to just show us. Look at the colors we created through it and all that kind of stuff. And there's that forgiveness and acceptance and gratitude for it. And
Yeah, I kept hearing from the very beginning. First it was step out of the fear, and then it was like everything's perfect, there are no mistakes, which alleviates the need for any fear. And that just expanded into this explosive spiral that just was so expansive and connecting to, you know, everything out there. It was great.
yeah, it was nice. Very nice. All right. Well, that's the task for everyone this week is look at the manipulation and see it without judgment, see it with freedom
Right.
instead of, victimhood. And how you can utilize it to your advantage, to your consciousness,
Right.
in
To your
terms of
freedom.
being free of it, transcendent to it, navigating it. To me, navigating means being free of it and simply still being here and walking through all the chaos without needing to be in the muck kind of thing.
Right.
So,
And as always, we'd love to hear what you experience, what
yes.
you think, whether you agree or disagree. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. And how doing this over the week helps you and whatever. And if you know others who can be who could benefit from this, please forward it on because many can benefit from this one especially.
Right.
So please
Absolutely.
share and forward this on in social media and email and whatever, and subscribe, follow, and come back next week.
Right.
All right. So in the meantime, we'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni
signing off with this week's Living Ascension. Have a great one.